Welcome to Panama. Panama may look like a tiny country on the map, but don't let its size fool you. This narrow strip of land connects two continents, two oceans, and hosts one of the greatest engineering projects in human history. In this video, we'll explore some of Panama's most beautiful places, from modern cities and tropical islands to lush rainforests and hidden gems. But this isn't just a travel story. Along the way, I'll also share practical tips, transportation options, costs, and everything you need to know to plan a similar trip yourself. And where better to start than the place that made Panama famous? Let's head to the Panama Canal and see what happens when humanity decides that sailing around an entire continent is simply too much work.
Our first stop is the Panama Canal. And getting here from Panama City, the country's capital, is surprisingly easy. From Albrook Terminal, a public bus takes you to the Miraflores Visitor Center for just 25 cents. That's less than the price of a bottle of water to visit one of the most important places in global trade. The entrance ticket costs around $17 and includes observation decks, exhibitions, a museum, and a movie explaining the canal's history. The canal works like a giant water elevator. Ships enter a lock, the gates close behind them, and gravity fills the chamber with water from Gatun Lake, lifting vessels up to 26 meters above sea level. Then, on the other side, the process happens in reverse. No pumps are needed. The entire system mainly relies on gravity and an enormous network of lakes, dams, and reservoirs. Now here's something most people don't know. When a ship enters the canal, a specially trained Panama Canal pilot comes on board and takes over navigation. Imagine being the captain of a ship worth hundreds of millions of dollars and suddenly hearing, "Thanks, we'll take it from here." The canal is so narrow and complex that local pilots know every turn, every current, and every meter of the route. Another question people often ask is, how much does it cost to use the canal? The answer: a lot. The fee depends on the size and type of vessel. For large container ships, the bill can easily reach several $100,000, and in some cases even more. Sounds expensive until you realize the alternative is sailing thousands of extra kilometers around South America. And speaking of waiting, ships don't simply show up and cross. Depending on traffic and conditions, some vessels may wait hours or even days for their turn. It's basically the world's most expensive traffic jam. The canal opened in 1914 and completely transformed global trade. Today, roughly 5% of all maritime trade passes through this narrow strip of land. For Panama itself, the canal is a national treasure. Its direct and indirect economic impact accounts for roughly 8% of the country's GDP and generates a significant share of government revenue. But perhaps the most fascinating story is who controls it. For most of the 20th century, the canal was operated by the United States. In 1977, Panamanian leader Omar Torrijos and U.S. President Jimmy Carter signed the Torrijos-Carter Treaties, which established a gradual transfer of control. The process took more than 20 years, and on December 31, 1999, the United States officially handed over the canal and thousands of buildings, military facilities, and vast areas of land to Panama. Since then, the canal has been fully managed by the Panama Canal Authority. And if you're wondering whether Panama can manage it on its own, the answer is a very confident yes. Since the handover, Panama has modernized the canal, expanded it with a new set of locks in 2016, and turned it into one of the country's most important sources of income. Standing here and watching these floating skyscrapers pass through the locks, it's hard not to admire the ambition behind the project. And all of this and even more fascinating details about how the canal was built, how it operates, and why it changed the world, you can experience in the IMAX movie and exhibitions inside the Miraflores Visitor Center. But don't think this is just a canal with a viewing deck. The whole area is actually a massive operational complex with control towers, maintenance facilities, lock systems, water management infrastructure, nearby hydroelectric plants that help support the region's energy needs, plus cafes and shops where you can grab a coffee while watching cargo ships the size of skyscrapers pass by. So yes, it's a tourist spot, but also one of the most important working arteries of global trade. In other words, history, engineering, and logistics all happening in real time right in front of you. After watching billion-dollar ships crawl through a man-made water elevator, it feels like we've already seen the main boss fight of Panama. But now it's time for something completely different. We're heading into Casco Viejo, Panama City's historic old town, and basically the opposite of the canal in every possible way. Narrow streets instead of massive locks, colonial buildings instead of steel giants, and rooftop bars instead of cargo ships. This is the part of the city where you just wander. No strict plan needed. Walk through Plaza de la Independencia, check out the Metropolitan Cathedral, and get lost between pastel-colored buildings that look like they were made for Instagram, but still carry centuries of history. Casco Viejo used to be the original Panama City, founded in the 1600s, and today it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It has seen pirates, fires, rebuilds, and now tourists looking for the perfect coffee shop with Wi-Fi and strong espresso. Speaking of that, this is also one of the best places to try local food, grab artisan coffee, or hunt for souvenirs, handmade crafts, and rum that may or may not survive the flight home. Speaking of souvenirs, this is where Panama hats show up everywhere. And here's the twist. They are not actually from Panama. They originated in Ecuador, but became famous worldwide during the construction of the Panama Canal, when workers and even US President Theodore Roosevelt were photographed wearing them here. So the name stuck, even though the hat didn't. If you're here, a few stops are worth it. The Panama Canal Museum, where you can actually understand the full story behind the canal we just saw. Small chocolate shops and coffee spots serving Panama's famous geisha coffee, and rooftop bars that turn sunset into a full experience rather than just a time of day. And just a short walk away is the seafood market where things get very real very fast. Fresh ceviche for a few dollars, locals grabbing lunch, and seagulls aggressively negotiating for their share of the business. Casco Viejo is the kind of place where you don't really tick off sights. You just walk, eat, get lost, and somehow end up on a rooftop wondering how a single city can look this different from street to street. From canal engineering to colonial streets, Panama clearly doesn't believe in doing things halfway. Now let's talk real for a second, because no city is perfect, and Panama City is no exception. Most of the main tourist areas like Casco Viejo, Cinta Costera, and the modern business district are generally safe during the day and even into the evening. But like in any big Latin American city, a bit of common sense goes a long way. There are areas outside the typical tourist zones, especially some parts of El Chorrillo or deeper residential districts, that are not really meant for visitors, particularly after dark. These aren't places you'd normally end up in anyway, but it's good to be aware and stick to the well-known areas. At night, it's better to avoid walking alone through empty streets outside Casco Viejo or away from the main avenues. Taxis or ride apps like Uber are cheap and widely used, so there's no real reason to take risks. Once you stay in the main areas and use basic travel awareness, the city is very doable and super rewarding. It's one of those places where a little caution simply lets you enjoy it more, not something that should stop you from exploring. After the chaos of the city and the engineering madness of the Panama Canal, we're now switching gears completely. Welcome to Metropolitan Natural Park, basically Panama City's reset button. And the crazy part? This is one of the only tropical rainforests in the world that sits inside a capital city. So yes, you can literally be surrounded by skyscrapers one minute and monkeys the next. Getting here is super easy. It's only about 10 to 15 minutes from downtown Panama City or Casco Viejo by Uber or taxi, and it costs just a few dollars. Entrance is around $5 for foreigners, making it one of the cheapest jungle experiences you'll ever have. Once inside, there are several well-marked hiking trails ranging from easy 30-minute walks to longer loops of about 1 to 2 hours. The most popular route leads to the lookout point at around 150 meters elevation. And from up there, you get one of the best views in the city: Panama's skyline on one side, the Pacific entrance to the canal on the other, and pure jungle in between. Now here's what makes this place special. This park is part of the biological corridor that helps supply water to the Panama Canal. So in a way, the jungle you're walking through is literally helping keep global trade running. Not bad for a morning hike. If you're lucky, you might spot sloths, monkeys, iguanas, or dozens of bird species. But fair warning, this isn't a zoo. The animals are doing their own thing, and they didn't get the memo about staying visible for tourists. There's also a small visitor center at the entrance, basic facilities, and everything is very well maintained. Everything we showed, you can actually do it in a day, but Panama is just getting started. Jungle tribes, wild animals, and hidden gems in Part 2. See you there.